Okay, I think we can go to some questions. How do we want to characterize this?
Leadership as to when this will be on the floor?
Well, there's good momentum for it now, with 190 members co-sponsoring it. And again, this is bipartisan. We're hopeful that this intensifies leadership interest in bringing this forward. Speaker Boehner has said he's going to use the regular order process, and so I assume that means it will go through Energy and Commerce. We've had a hearing in Energy and Commerce already in the subcommittee on this, but I hope that it is expedited.
If I can just add, on the Senate side,
Yeah.
we should get a vote on the blunt language, which is the Senate companion, as an amendment to the highway bill soon after the recess.
Great, excellent. Yes?
Why do you say the rule requires employers indirectly to pay for contraceptive?
Well, they're forced to make provision of the same things that they have deep objections to, based upon their religious tenets and moral precepts. That's why. It's an accounting accommodation, not a substantive one.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
Look, the president said he'll just get the insurance companies to provide that. Well, the insurance companies cannot stay in business unless they pass the costs along. And that means anybody that buys those insurance policies will be subsidizing what so many believe is inappropriate because it violates their religious beliefs. And so what the president's doing actually would require an amendment to the First Amendment. So, because he said if you have individual beliefs about this, too bad. If you're a Catholic church, then okay, we'll try to accommodate. What he needs to stick in and get an amendment passed would change the First Amendment to say, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, but only if you're a religious institution and your beliefs agree with the President of the United States. Till that point, he needs to lay off.
You know, in all candor, and I say this to the press out of respect, what President Obama did on Friday doesn't pass the straight face test. Who buys the insurance? The religious employers buy it, and if there's a copay, or like we have here in Congress, a 70-30, whatever it might be, so do their employees. So you're buying the insurance. You're subsidizing the insurance that, again, will pay for things like Plan B and ELA, which are abortifacients.
But the other thing that nobody is discussing, we're talking about religious institutions. But what about people of strong faith and morals that also have companies and also give insurance to their employees? Do they not also have a right to have the same convictions as the religious leaders? Of course they do. The First Amendment didn't parse out who got to have religious freedom and who didn't. It said every American can have religious freedom. So the folks back home that I represent that have large companies and are very strong in faith and morals and do not currently provide this will be forced to provide it. My friends, that violates the First Amendment. This is what this is about, and Virginia Fox was right. If they're going after religious freedom, then they're going to go after speech. And then the third provision in the First Amendment, and I implore all of you to read the First Amendment and memorize it, is going to be the press. Then it's going to be assembly, and then it's going to be the right for us to petition grievances. Those are the 5 provisions in the First Amendment. There was no mistake by our founding fathers to make that the First Amendment. It was going to be the third. They pushed it to the first because they felt that you and I had those rights. And those rights are what made America great. And now the first part of that 5-part provision is being trampled on. So this isn't about contraception. This is about our Constitution. That's what you need to focus on, because they're going to come after you.
Beautifully said.
If I could just add one more small thing. I agree with everything that's been said. The accommodation is just a silly word game, completely superficial. But the case which makes that the most obvious is what about all these self-insured entities? There's no separate insurance company to even play a word game with. What about the University of Notre Dame? What about the Archdiocese of Washington State? What about all sorts of Catholic-owned hospitals?
Well, let me add on what Senator Vitter has said. A lot of entities are self-insured. And what this quote accommodation does is to make them go into the insurance exchanges where they are not subject only to the regulation that we have been talking about, but every other regulation that may come down in the future relative to regulating the insurance policies that they have to buy. Unless the Secretary of Health and Human Services gives a waiver to an institution that has a self-insured plan, then come 2014, every one of them goes into the exchanges. And that opens the crack that is in the door now on religious freedom to a wide open door, because nobody knows what they have in mind in the future.
It's the same bill. Yes.
The same bill?
Yes.
So it's not just about contraception, but any healthcare mandate that you would...
That's correct. It protects religious liberty and the rights of conscience for religious institutions, other faith-based employers, or an individual whose beliefs would be affected by their moral precepts would be strongly infringed upon because of their reasoned belief system.
So it's not just about the contraception.
That's why this
Correct.
Baptist is here with his Catholic friends.
Yeah.
That's the point we've been trying to make. It's not about contraceptives.
There we go. Hey, back here.
Congressman, considering how strongly you feel about, and the rest of your colleagues feel about this issue, would you or any of your colleagues be willing to refuse to support a presidential candidate who, as governor, mandated that religious nonprofits pay for contraception?
Well, somebody else want to do that?
Would anybody be willing to do that?
That's not the
We're focused
The,
on this.
the bill before us, obviously this is a legislative initiative that we're trying to undertake. Of course, we'd like our eventual nominee, but this is a bipartisan bill. I mean, I would hope that the people who are co-sponsors of this bill would urge President Obama to sign this, because he has stated that he is for the principles of religious liberty. If so, I think he should be comfortable with this measure. Yes?
If this is an obvious constitutional violation, why wouldn't the remedy be in the courts?
Well, it very well could be. There are lawsuits going on now by both private institutions, Catholic institutions, other faith institutions. You may see individual employers, for instance, bring lawsuits in this regard. I think we need a full court press here, because this is such a deep violation of a fundamental American principle.
But the Constitution gives us power of the purse. It gives us the right to address this legislatively. Why should we have to go to the courts?
I think we'll do one more. You want to do one more?
Yeah, the issue is
One
not
more?
exemption. The issue is immunity. Every institution and every person in the United States has a right to be immune from government acts that violate the Constitution. That's what we're talking about. That's the breadth of this. And if they're immune because of violations of the Constitution, then those acts should of themselves have to be repealed. That's how broad this is. The president himself has no conscience. When he tries to impose upon the people of America the fact that his conscience, if he has any at all, which he doesn't under the circumstances, will prevail over the conscience of other people, including all employers. The issue here is these people here, including myself, we're ready to march with the cardinals, with priests, with the bishops, with other clergy, and other people who deeply fear the fact that this is just another assault upon faith in our country by this president.
You know, I think it's important, I don't want to speak out of turn here.
Go ahead, Trent.
But I think it's important to keep in mind that all of the things that have been said here today about the president's willingness to use the power of government to abrogate people's rights of conscience, it's a big enough issue all by itself. But keep in mind, he did this in an election year. What will he do after he's reelected? There will be no stopping this mindless willingness to completely abrogate the conscience of all Americans.
Did you have a question? I think we'll wrap up after that.
Under this bill, will an individual employee, as opposed to an employer, be protected from being forced to purchase a health care plan that covers sterilization?
No, again, this is the government forcing a health care provider to violate their religious belief or their rights of conscience. It's the government forcing. People are still free to enter into all kinds of associations. All this does is restore the principle to where we were a year and a half ago, before the new health care law was in place. that we lived with for 220 years as a society, as Americans. That's what it does. Okay? I'll conclude by saying I received an email yesterday from a woman named Karen, and she said, I'm a health care provider, I'm a Catholic. I need to stay within the lanes of my faith. If this mandate goes through, I will not be able to provide health care services. I don't think that's what the President of the United States wants to achieve here. I don't think that's what this rule should be forcing Americans to have a conflict over. Thank you all very much.